Hello, and thank you for being a part of IAAP's virtual audience for Negotiate, When You Must Be Heard. To our live attendees, thank you so much for joining us. To change the view of your screen, please click the buttons at the bottom of the content sharing screen. Enter any questions you have in the Q&A module, and Mary will respond. For answers to questions Mary may ask, please use the chat box. A download speed of 5 megabytes per second or higher is recommended for uninterrupted viewing. Your certificate of attendance will be sent out by the end of the week. To our on-demand attendees, welcome. You will obtain your certificate of completion after you pass a short quiz at the end of the webinar. And now, please join me in welcoming our presenter. Mary A. Redmond is a speaker, author, negotiator, and coach. She has spoken at many IAAP events. For 21 years, Mary negotiated contracts for some of the biggest financial institutions in the world, including GE Capital, Ford Financial Services, Mellon Bank, and Wells Fargo Bank. She was honored by the Kansas City Business Journal as a Woman Who Mean Business Award recipient, is a past president of the National Speakers Association Kansas City chapter, and a founding member of the Bonner Springs Toastmasters Club. Here's Mary, the fearless negotiator.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you have been looking forward to learning a little bit about when you must be heard, you must negotiate. And a lot of people, I find, let's make sure this goes. Okay. Can't get them to advance. There we go. The stuff that we're going to cover this afternoon is the art of negotiation. Is there an art to this thing called negotiations? We'll talk about your style. I can't teach you style. Your style is your style. Perhaps I can help you modify it a little. We'll talk about the mental blocks, the roadblocks that come into a negotiation. And some of that's your attitude about the negotiation. And then we'll go into a process that I developed called the heard process. Because isn't that really what you want when you're negotiating with someone? Is you want them to listen to you, you want to be heard, you want to make a difference, and that people care about you and listen. I'm learning to maneuver this. Some of you may think about negotiations as something high-tech. There'll be charts and graphs, complications, and the internet will, of course, be involved, just like it is today in our workshop. But negotiation, I find, could be viewed like this. It's someone with a backstabbing pair of scissors ready to go after you every time you speak up for yourself, ask for something you want, or negotiate the terms of an interaction or a job assignment. But really, negotiation looks a whole lot more like this. Think about it. It's two people usually sitting down and talking about what they need, what they want, and how are they going to get there. Now, I wish that on your worksheet, you have a worksheet there. If you've printed it out or make notes on a piece of paper, write down what your most difficult negotiation situation is right now. What's bugging you? What really gets to you? Is it a deadline that's Friday and 3 people have told you their project is the most important and they've got to have theirs done this Friday, all at noon, because they want to go away for a long weekend? Well, you can't be 3 people, and so you're going to have to work to get each of those projects finished in a timely manner. And it may not all be on Friday at noon. So that's what a negotiation is. So write down just a couple of words that will remind you what your biggest negotiation problem is right now. I'll give you a couple seconds. Negotiation is really more about, first, making choices. What is it you want? Some of you may be in HR and you're making the decisions about hiring and firing. Who to train? Can we save this person? Should we put in a little more time in training or not? Sometimes we're making decisions as complicated as what's right and what's wrong. Those are hard decisions. For me, today, one of my big decisions was what color am I going to wear? I look great in red, but I chose the purple. Sometimes that's the first negotiation as you walk into your closet in the morning. And then, of course, you head to the kitchen, and it's, will I have a donut or will I eat healthy and have some yogurt and a piece of fruit? All of those are negotiations. It isn't always an international table with a bunch of guys sitting around with white shirts and ties on. Negotiation probably starts in your closet in the morning. It proceeds on as you drive to work. You jockey for the best parking spot. So negotiation can include a whole lot. It's about asking. It's first deciding what you want, and then it's about making the ask. Now, we don't all ask using a megaphone to scream our needs like the fellow here in this photo did. But my primary goal in life is to say, if you don't ask, you don't get. It's as simple as that. But that we'll talk towards the end of the workshop today about the ways to ask. How you ask is your style. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not going to mess with your style. I may buff it, I may polish it a bit. But look at those three pictures. Who looks like their style might be effective? The picture on the left, I would say the two people are too close together. So the shorter of the two feels very intimidated. In the picture in the center, look at the lady's eyes. She's not happy. Something this man is saying is making her a bit upset. The true best picture of a negotiation is the one where the two are sitting almost side by side and they're working in collaboration with one another. And yes, sometimes we get bullied around, or we are the bully and we get pushy. And I enjoyed making the parallel here of the two bulls going at it in the similar way that two people do in a negotiation conference table, head to head, nose to nose. I would assure you that that is not the most effective method to get what you want in life. We'll talk about the mental game now. Sometimes we think it's us and them. I don't know who them is, and that doesn't even sound proper. Who are they, the other people? We often talk about they don't like us. They won't give us what we need. If we viewed a negotiation as us and we're on the same team working together towards a goal, that mental game will get you somewhere. One of the most important parts in negotiation also is your timing. Is this a good time? If your boss just came back from vacation, this is probably not the best time to ask for a raise. Or if they've been sick. I had a client I was working with at one time. Her boss had been gone for 2 weeks on an international business trip. And the first day back in the office for him, she resigned. I encouraged her. I said, this is not the best day to resign. This is going to really make it rough for your next 2 to 4 weeks, however you two work it out, whether you're giving 2 weeks notice or 4 weeks notice. She was a dean at a university and I was coaching her. So timing, aversion. Is there something about someone you just don't like? You know the kind. I'm not telling you anything that's a secret. There are certain people. I had a woman ask me one time, she said, I need a little help on my boss. And I said, you don't like her, do you? She said, well, how'd you know? And I said, when you talk, I read your body language. And it was screaming, I have contempt for my boss. Not only do I not like working for them, I dislike them as a human being. Be careful. Your body language will show that aversion that you have. I'm known as the fearless negotiator. Now, what does that mean? Am I fearless? No, I fear less. I'm not fearful. I fear less because I know more about a process, and that's what the herd process is we're going to be talking about, is what is the herd process. There's some of us that just hate to negotiate. Can you read it on this woman's face? It's like, oh no, do I have to negotiate again? What are the things that run through your body when you know you're going to face a negotiation? I taught a workshop for IAAP in Topeka, and I asked the participants, and there were about 45 of them, and I said, how many of you love to negotiate? Oh, well, I'm really good at negotiation at home, my kids or with my husband, but the office, I don't have any power. Oh, but you do have power. You have power in every negotiation. And to me, it's because of this golden rule of negotiation. People will not negotiate with you unless they believe that you can hurt them or help them. Now think about that for a minute. How can you hurt someone or help someone? Well, remember the example of the bosses with the deadlines at noon on Friday? You can help them, make them look like a hero and get their project done on time. You can hurt them and not get it done. What about that executive that drives you crazy that says, I need an airline, a flight, and a great hotel room. What can you do? And, oh, I'm going to fly Southwest, and I love Southwest, everybody. But I want to be in the first 30 to board the airplane. Well, you have to call 24 hours in advance to assure that, or you pay more for your ticket. I think sometimes the extra $15 that you can figure out how to take care of in their budget would be a choice, and they will love you because you got them on the airplane in the first 30 people. Southwest is a huge carrier here in Kansas City, so I travel them most of the time when I'm traveling to come and see you and your chapters. So you can hurt or help almost anyone, and therefore they're going to negotiate with you. Now there's the mental game of negotiation. The mental game of fear. That's what the F word in this case is. And we all face fear in different ways. Your style, remember? Some of us, our response to fear is flight. If I can run away from it and never have to face it, I'm happy. And then there's those of us who fight. Remember the pictures of the bulls? Now those are your fighters. They're knocking heads. Fold looks a lot like flight, only here's the body language of fold. I give up. I lose. I can't win. Yeah, that's a fold. Fake it? Okay, ladies, men, whoever, we've all been faking it for a long time. Whether it's, do you know how to use this software program? Oh, of course I do. Of course I do. Fake it and freeze. Now, you know how to recognize freeze. You're in a board meeting at church or at your kid's school, or perhaps one in your office, and they say, we need a volunteer to manage this next project. Guess what a lot of people who do not want to be volunteered do? Freeze. They hold their breath, and maybe no one will pick them for the project. If you don't breathe, you freeze, and no one will see you. And so they won't pick you to run the project. There's also the fearless mental game. We talk about the mental game that can ruin you, but this is the mental game that will make you successful in negotiation. Look at that firefighter. That woman is brave. She is prepared. She's been well trained, I can assume. She visualizes what she needs to do. And as she has been well trained, if she's been well trained, she has a plan A through Z. I was doing a workshop here in Kansas City not too long ago, and I had a woman tell me, she said, I can't just have a plan A and a plan B. That's not enough. I'm a single mom and I have 3 kids. I must have a plan A through Z. So if you have your plan A through Z, you know you're prepared for a negotiation. And which route will you take? There's an easy way and there's a hard way. And this might be a good time to see, do we have any questions? Anyone have anything that they would like to ask me about style, about the mental game, about some of the early basics before we go on into some more of the process? Do we see any questions? I think we're doing okay then. Now we'll start into the process. There's a process, but why would you want to take time to develop a process of negotiation? Well, it comforts me to know what I'm going to do next. What's the next step I should take? And even if it's a negotiation with my spouse, my kids, my colleagues at work, the church board, whatever it is, I have a process that can be replicated. I do the same basic steps. I may modify it a little, but I can replicate it. And then I can tailor it to fit each specific situation. Because successful negotiators are prepared negotiators. And this is one of the books that I really enjoy called The Power of Nice. If you find that you've enjoyed or are enjoying our negotiation conversation today, at the end I'll give you an opportunity to request my list of negotiation books. There's a lot of books that I have on my bookshelf here in my office that I read on both negotiation and body language, because I've been negotiating for 25 years, but I learn from people like you every day, new ways, new techniques to make it better. So we're going to get down to business. We're going to talk about the negotiation process because I want to be heard. Isn't that what you want? You want to be heard too. You want the person you're talking to respect you and listen to you. And some of us, we rush into our negotiation. But I'm going to tell you that to negotiate and be heard, you've got to follow the HEARD process. It's an acronym. Almost every speaker has an acronym. My H in HEARD is for homework. The E is for engage and explore. The A is for assess. That's assess what we know and what we don't know. R is for role play and make our recommendation. And D is for documentation. Now, if you've on your worksheet, the H is homework, E is engage, A is assess, R role play, recommendation, and then fill in D for documentation. And now we're going to get into each one of the elements of those. Homework. Oh, we're back in school and you've got to do your homework. And this is so important because most people do not take time to do the research and the homework before they rush in and want to talk to someone about that issue. If you want a raise, if you want a supplier to give you a bigger discount, you have to do your homework. Now, homework, what does that mean? I have to take a look at my company's needs and wants or my personal needs and wants. And then I have to think about the other people. What's in it for them? Why would they make a concession, lower their price, or give me better service if I have a negotiation with them? So I have to look at my side, and I have to look at your side, the other company or the other party's side. Now, how am I going to do that? Well, today we're fortunate we have a lot of online tools. We have the internet. So start to jot down some of the places you could research. Let's say it's a new copier supplier for your office and you're going to negotiate. Where would you go to do the homework on online tools? If you know that Susan is your sales rep, and you know her last name and you know who she works for, you might check out Susan before she calls on you on LinkedIn, maybe even Facebook, Twitter, and see what she's saying, see what she's like. If she works for the ABC Copier Company, how about checking out ABC? What can I learn about ABC? Do they have any specials? Have they added new staff? Maybe I can pick up some gossip at another IAAP meeting about how's that company's service on their equipment. Maybe there'll be a chat line going from former employees of that company. And maybe I'll learn some tips or some points about how to negotiate with that copier dealer. Step 3 in homework is consider your timelines. You must consider how much time do you have. I have a client who has a project. They're getting a lot of technology equipment in the fall. So they have to start this summer on working on the financial negotiations of the financial contracts that are going to govern that particular transaction because they want to find a new leasing company. So they're going to be negotiating all of the documents so that that technology equipment can arrive easily and a clean delivery and installation in October. So we have to look at the timelines. And sometimes you may not want to let your suppliers or individuals know what your timeline is. Let's say you have a project you must get in by Friday at noon, but you need or require reports from other people in the other departments. Do you tell them Friday noon is your deadline? No. Wednesday, Tuesday maybe preceding your deadline, because you know and I know people are going to ask for an extension. Oh, I can't get it done. Something came up. Mary, help me. And they'll ask for a little extra time. So we need to be sure that we have allowed plenty of time. Now here's a new thought. How about an accountability partner? If your manager, boss, president, CEO, whoever you work for, is not watching what you're doing very closely, you might find a colleague at work, a coworker, to be your accountability partner. In sales, it happens all the time. We'll tell a buddy, hey, I'm going to close this sale this afternoon in this appointment, and this is the price I'm going to sell the equipment for. And when I come back from that appointment, I expect them to hold me accountable, because that's the only way I'm going to get better, is if someone's there to hold me accountable. So select an accountability partner. And maybe before they go out for their negotiations, they use you as an accountability partner. How about teams? Some of you have probably heard of the good cop, bad cop. Oftentimes a spouse, a husband and wife will play good cop, bad cop when they get ready to go out to buy a car. I know that's what I do. I do the financial homework. I do all of the research online because my husband's not that great on the car research. And then sometimes he's the good guy, and I'm the hard person to deal with. I'm the tough guy when we work with a car salesman. We recently just bought a couple of cars, and they're used, and we were dealing with individuals. Now, we're entirely different when we deal with individuals than when we deal with a car salesman at a big car dealership. Let's talk about team roles. What's your role in the negotiation? In each negotiation, there's lots of jobs to do. Someone may, if it's a team that you bring in, you may have an expert. So let's say we're looking at new technology equipment. We'll bring in someone from our IT area that understands the technology. We'll bring in someone from operations so that we know, can we install this equipment on a timely basis? Is there enough electricity? Is there enough space? I might even be the note taker at the meeting. And that's one of the most important roles, is to be the person who records who said what, who's going to do what, who's going to take care of the details to guarantee that everything everybody committed to at the meeting or in the negotiation is accounted for and reported in on in a timely basis. So sometimes the note taker is one of the most important people, but the thing is, know what your job is at the negotiation. Second step, engage and explore. Now, stifle your brilliance. Do you remember, some of you who may be old enough to remember the Archie Bunker show? He used to tell his wife, Edith, stifle yourself, Edith. Here I'm talking about stifling your brilliance. Because we may know everything about a certain topic. And then we're in a meeting and we're so excited to tell someone all the stuff we know. It just comes gushing and gushing out of our mouth. I would suggest you stifle your brilliance and follow the 80-20 rule. And in this case, the 80 is not talking. 80% is listening. 20% is talking. Again, I'm going to reinforce here to take notes when you're meeting with someone who you want to negotiate with. Take good notes. If they say, well, I'd just love to be able to give you a raise, Marcia. However, this is not the right time in our fiscal year. You need to wait until October to put that request in. So you take good notes. You ask open and closed-ended questions. Most people know what those are. Open-ended questions can be answered with a whole bunch of words. It's not a question like, did you wake up on time this morning? Did you get to the office on time? The answer to that is yes or no, I did or I didn't make it on time. Open, we get a debate. An open-ended question is more like the ones that are the 5 W's and the 1 H. If you've ever been in a writing class, you know the who, what, when, where, and why. And the big H is how. So we ask questions. Who else will be involved in this decision to give me a raise? Who else is involved in the hiring? What is my next step in getting this job? Where do we go from here? Why would you say that I might be the perfect candidate? What about my background makes me the perfect person for your company? So those are examples of the W's. And the H, how are we going to get there? How do we get it done? So the 5 W's and the 1 H are essential ingredients in when we begin to do our 80% listening. Remember, you'd ask a question. When do you need this project turned in? What format do you want? And then you just quiet. And the 80-20 rule applies. Listen and then take good notes as to what their response is. We're going to move on to the A step, the assess and probe. So let's review. We've had the H, which is homework. The E is engage. A is assess and probe, what we know and what we don't know. We've been using the 5 W's and the big H. But now we're going to ask a little more sophisticated questions. So let's go back to our situation where we're trying to get hired for a new job. And they say, well, you don't have enough experience as in the accounting and bookkeeping fact from what you shared. And you say, other than that, what about my candidacy for this position are you concerned about? So you've isolated, they've told you that your accounting or bookkeeping might not be strong enough, but you say, other than that, is there anything else? One good technique to extract information from someone, other than that, what else are you concerned about? Here's another technique. Answer a question with a question. If I had you all here in a workshop with me, I'd say, let's practice this one. it's good with people who will not participate or trying to be tough guy and be closed. And they'll say, well, Joyce, why do you want to work here? Why, that's an interesting question. Why do you ask that? Well, I wanted to know if you'd be a good fit. Well, what about my background makes me a good fit? I haven't given any information yet. I have only responded with questions. That means I'm going to extract more information from them because I ask questions. I don't give out answers. Now, here's another one I love. It's the technique called the parrot. And I learned this one in marriage counseling. I wasn't the counselor. My husband and I were in marriage counseling. We were having what you might call difficulty in communications, arguments. And what our counselor taught us to do, and what I still use all the time in negotiation, is I'm rephrasing what I've just heard my spouse say. So, honey, what I hear you saying is, I can't back out of the garage without hitting the door. Is that what you said? Oh, okay, I just wanted to make sure that was what it was you said because you were screaming so loudly I couldn't tell. What was it that I did? I confirmed that I understood what he meant. When someone says to you, I'll call you back later, this isn't a good time. Do you know when later is? Is later this afternoon? Is later tomorrow? Is later never? I have a banker friend who says if a customer says to him, I'll call you later, it means they're never calling him back. So in the parrot, you're rephrasing for someone what you heard them say and confirming that you understood the message they gave you way too often. Like another one is, why don't you turn at the next corner? Well, which one's the next corner? I don't know. Are we counting this one? Or is it the next one? Or the next traffic light? There's so many words that we're not sure about. If someone tells you your technology, your software, is out of date, how out of date does that mean? Did it expire yesterday or 2 years ago? You have to find out. Say, well, you would use the parrot to say, I heard you say our stuff's outdated. Is that what I'm understanding? Is that what you mean? Yeah, that's what I mean. And here's another one I really enjoy. It's, what did I forget? It's kind of a weird question to ask, but a lot of times people want to help you in a negotiation. Let's say it's a salary negotiation. You're going to work at a new company. You say, what did I forget to ask about your company that would make me really want to come to work here? So you've asked the hiring manager, tell me more about your company, because I probably forgot to ask a really important question. So we've now gone through 3 steps. Homework, the H, the E, engage, A, assess. Do we have any questions so far in the material we've covered? Are you wanting to save them to the end? Because I can take them now. We're doing really well and I've got plenty of time. If you do, you can participate in the chat by writing in a couple of questions, or you can save them to the end. Now, we're going to do a little test. I hope you have a piece of paper there, and I want you to draw a barn for me. Remember, we've just been through the H, E, and A steps, and we're moving on to the recommendation. But before the recommendation, I want you to just draw a barn for me. And no one has a question for me, right? Is this the barn you drew?
It looks like Tammy says, please tell the W's again.
The W?
The W's.
On the 5 W's.
Yes.
Who, what, when, where, and why. Why? It's what every journalist knows when they're going to write an article about something. We've got to find out who did it, where did they do it, when did they do it, why did they do it, and I forgot one. Who, what is it that's going to happen? That's the what. Who, what, when, where, why. You're welcome, Tammy. Thank you. Now, Tammy, I hope you are drawing a barn, and most of the time, if I'm in front of a class, this is kind of the barn I get. But it depends. No one asked me the magic question, what kind of barn? Remember, Tammy just asked about the who, what, when, where, why, and how. No one said in a question, well, what kind of barn, Mary? These are all barns, you guys. If you have horses, it's the barn in the lower left. If you have cattle, it could be the one upper right or upper left. If you're a really old farmer, you've got the barn in the center. Most of the barns, if people had color, they would paint them red. I have found in my workshops. How about the one on the right in the middle? That's a stone barn. You would find more of those in Europe. And the lower right, that's a tobacco barn. So some of you folks who might be in the Midwest or in the South, you're familiar with tobacco drying barns. All of these are barns, but it certainly would make a difference if someone at the office said, we're going to go put a barn in the back of our offices. You'd want to know what kind of barn. I use this as a test to remember, to remind you the who, what, when, where, why, and the how. Before you start on an assignment or a project, or before you begin a negotiation, make sure you know the answers to those things. Now the R is rehearse, role play, and renegotiate. R stands for a lot of things. Remember the lady I told you who had a plan A through Z? She also mentioned to me, she said, I want the buddy system when I'm getting ready to negotiate with my boss for a raise or a client to sell something. I want to get a buddy who's just like them, same attitude, maybe the same gruff voice, maybe the tough exterior. And that's my buddy to rehearse, to role play, because you'll never get to Carnegie Hall if you don't rehearse, do a little role play. And you have to be ready to renegotiate if the first attempt didn't work. You might switch roles and say, okay, you're the boss. I'll be the boss now. In this negotiation, I'm going to play the boss. And I'm going to think of all the reasons they don't want to give me a raise. And then I'm going to be able to think better about my answers to those objections because I've switched roles and I've pretended I'm the person across the desk from me. This is also the time to find an internal advocate. And what do I mean by that? If you are dealing with a supplier, the salesman may come and go, but you should always have other advocates inside the service company who's, let's say it's the company maintaining your copiers. Always know more than one service technician. Always know their supervisor's name. You need to have more than one person at a company to be your internal advocate. If the offer when you're looking for a job comes from HR, do you have someone else that you know at that company who can help you get ready for the negotiation for your offer should it come for a salary? So find out about an internal advocate. I see Marley's has, how can we find out about the things I can't see the rest of the question.
Need to click on it. It says, how can we find out about the things we don't know? How can we know what we don't know?
Asking those 5 W's. Great question, Marlies. Great question. How do you find out what you don't know that you don't know? Open-ended questions will give you that. Who else is involved in the process? I may not know that there's a president and then a senior vice president underneath them and then a general manager and then a regional manager, but I have to ask, who else is involved in the process? If I don't know the price, or if I don't know the other companies who maybe sell this same service or product that are calling on me, that's when I go back to my homework step. And I get online and I research to find out who else sells these supplies, who else sells these products. So again, I have used the who, what, when, where, why, and how very openly. The biggest key to finding out what you don't know about what you don't know is to ask really open-ended questions, the one that just lets that other person talk and talk and talk. It'll help you a lot. Hope that handles that question, Marlies. The last part of herd process. Remember, the whole thing for a herd is a process that I can use in all situations. So I've done my homework, I've gone online, I found out something about the people I'm going to be negotiating with. I have engaged in conversation. I'm going to have to take a quick drink of water here, excuse me. Thank you. I've engaged in conversations. I've asked the open-ended questions. I found out what I don't know and gone back with more questions. That's the assess. I've practiced in my role play, and now I've got to do the paperwork, the documentation. This is what I did for 20-some years, is negotiate contracts. And the words in every contract were so critical. I had to watch the details of the documents, and many of you are the gatekeepers for documentation in your companies. So you have a really important role. You're going to look for the details. I was in an extensive and long negotiation on contracts, and I did something as silly as to hold what I thought was the latest version up to the old version. They were the same. They hadn't made any changes. I held them up to the light, not a sophisticated process. And I could see that version 1 and version 2 were identical. None of the changes that I had requested had been made. Watch for details. Always countersign documents. What do I mean by that? Make sure that their company signs it and your company signs it, and you get copies of all of it. Sometimes you'll have a copy when they're there at your office with just your signature. You never stop to have them send you the fully enacted contract with their signatures. You will want that. If anything ever blows up, you want counter signatures. OBTWs. One of my bosses 25 years ago had, those are called oh by the ways. Oh by the ways are sneaky little things that show up, a small piece of paper that some people will say, oh, it's not significant, it's not a big deal. Read the oh by the way documents. They usually are important. In one case, I had a client who said, well, Mary, I didn't have time to read this one, and they just came on, these pieces of paper came in on the day the contract, or the day the equipment arrived. And I said, and you didn't read them? He said, no, they told me it was no big deal. I read them. They were a big deal. They extended his payments on his financing for 3 extra months should he miss one little fine element in the big contract, an automatic 3-month extension. So that, oh, by the way, was really important. Another thing, date all the contracts, all the correspondence that you send. Make sure it's dated. I had a president of a company I worked with out on the West Coast in Seattle. She never dated any documents. I didn't know whether equipment she had was 5 years old or 2 years old. It was crazy, but I got her to start dating documents. So help those people you support in your office by dating documents. Now, what are you going to do differently? What will you do that's new in the homework? I'll give you another story on the homework situation. I was helping someone with a negotiation. I was coaching her on how to get a very, very large refund for her company. And I said, who will you be negotiating with? She said, oh, I don't know. Here's his name. And I said, have you Googled him? Do you have any idea who he is or what he's all about? No, I didn't take any time to do that. Well, let's just do it right now on the phone. She was in Ohio. I got online and I found out that this man's title was the Executive Senior Vice President of the Northern Hemisphere. And she was a regional manager, and yet she had the authority to negotiate for her company. She hadn't bothered to do any homework about the guy that she would be negotiating with. I suggested she do some homework and also that she have her people let his people know that she could make a final decision for her company, even though her title wasn't important enough. Sometimes our titles don't show or demonstrate how important we are. So all of that came with homework. Reviewing now, engagement. The who, what, when, where, why. Remember the parrot. Assess what you heard and then say it back to the other party. What I hear you saying is, what I understand you meant by. Get other phrases like that that will help you rephrase for someone what you thought you heard. And it will confirm that what the message they sent is the one you received. The role play, get a buddy, find someone to work with. Practice. This is the time to practice before every negotiation, because in the negotiation you may only get one chance to negotiate. And D, do the documentation. Make sure the paperwork is thorough and complete. I'm hoping you're now thinking and jotting down some things that you want to do differently in your negotiation process. I'm going to go on to a little bit of bonus material right here. It's called situations and tactics. Sometimes negotiations don't go smooth and easy. So here are some bonus thoughts. It's how you say it is what's really, really important. If I talk really fast and I live in the South, but I'm from New York and I talk so fast that some people can't understand what thing I say, the speed can be inappropriate for the people you're talking to. Your volume. Some folks just speak very loudly and others speak very softly. A suggestion in a meeting, if you think you're not being heard, don't speak louder, speak softer and lean forward. If you're sitting at a conference table, lean forward like I am right now and speak softer. Very often people will get quiet to hear what you said. Pitch or projection. I was attending a training for volunteers 2 weeks ago. The young people conducting the training did not project well. The audience average age was 60. These kids, they were wonderful, enthusiastic, passionate, but they did not project well. And I would guess that a good part of their audience had some hearing challenges. So make sure that you project. Filler words, what are those and do you know? If you fill your speech, your conversation with filler words, if you do, you're losing your negotiation control. Filler words are like, and, you know, I recently went to a big presentation. The audience were 500 business people. The presenter was a senior executive at a huge international company. She said over 100 uhs in 40 minutes. The audience was bored. She could have had a good message, but who would know, because the uhs filled. If you count and do the math on that, there was one coming out of her mouth more than every 10 seconds. Those filler words will drop the audience, lose people. How about passive? What's passive sound like and look like? Oh, it's me kicking back like this. I don't care. Whatever happens. Your voice says that as well, even if you conduct all your negotiations on the telephone. A passive voice is noticed. How about some alternate tactics? If you're in a negotiation and you've been coming down or raising your let's say it's for a house. I watch a lot of home purchasing and HGTV shows. The seller wants $200,000. The buyer wants to pay $180,000. And you've been moving upwards at $5,000 increments. Decrease those concessions down to $1,000. You'll let them know that you're getting fed up with the negotiation. Have you ever thought about changing location in a negotiation that's not going well? Perhaps you say, let's go get a cup of coffee down at Starbucks. That can change the whole mood of a negotiation. You could switch negotiators. Remember when I said there's a team of negotiators? How about switching? Have someone else take the lead. How about leave the door open just a little? Because you're getting tired and you may want to leave this negotiation. You always want to leave the door open. And how about your emotions? Is there any role for emotions? This guy's face is about as emotionless as I could find in a picture. Mostly it's the negative emotions, but sometimes that's the positive emotions you don't want to show. If you think the price on something looks pretty good, don't get all excited and show it. And don't maybe show it's terrible or negative. You definitely do not want to show in a negotiation anger, resentment, revenge. And you don't want to offer excuses. No room in a negotiation for excuses. So sometimes you walk away in a negotiation. Women, I think, we have, if most of you are women out there and I don't know, we have a tendency to walk away. But sometimes we don't. We just sit and take it. Kenny Rogers had it right. Know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and know when to walk away. There was one situation 8 years ago. I was working for a client. It was the biggest client I'd ever had. One of the individuals there was my main contact. He was refusing to give me the information I needed to fulfill my contract terms, to do the analysis that I needed. So I went around him. But before I went around him, I told him in both voicemail, email, I left him messages. I said, if you don't give these materials to me by Friday, I'm going to have to go to the boss. His boss's boss, that was. And I received no word back from him, so I went, and I went around him. It got very uncomfortable for him, and he planned revenge. Remember, no negative emotions? Well, he planned revenge. He said he'd get them ready for me on Tuesday. Called me. I went into the room. I brought a colleague of mine with me. I'll also call her my witness. She was there with me. This individual was about 6'3", huge guy, red-faced, angry. And he said, Denise, I don't need you in this room for this meeting. Please leave. I protested 3 times. I said, no, she can stay. He said, no, she goes. We went back and forth. I gave in. And as soon as she was out of the room, he began to yell at me. Don't you ever go around me again. And he was threatening me. I took it. This client was so big, it was so important that I didn't walk away. Today, I would walk away, hold my head high, and say, Bill, when you're ready to have a civil conversation, we can, but I will not accept you yelling at me. Sometimes in a negotiation, we must walk away. I hope that gave you a little bit of courage to negotiate and walk away. If you have some questions, now's the time. I have some things to share with you if you are interested in more information. Look on your handout. There's a bunch of free stuff that I give away. It's not here on the slide, but look on your handout. There's several things that I have. There's my negotiation reading resource list. There's a great article I wrote on negotiations. There's body language books, and you can get those by going to fearlessnegotiator.com and just signing up in the box, and I'll send them to you. If some of you have known me for a long time and you know that I also do motivational speaking, I just launched this month something called 365 Best Days. For 20 years, I've been collecting positive sayings and things that keep me boosted up in the morning. I'd like to share those with you. You can go to 365 Best Days and register for it. And every day in your mailbox, there'll be some inspirational thought or quote. The stories are about themes that I find really important in my life. In week 1, all the quotes will be about faith. Faith that things will turn out all right. Second week, all the quotes are about hope. Third week, forgiveness. Fourth week, acceptance. And so it goes. 52 weeks of the year, 52 themes, and quotes that will lift you up each day. So I'd love you to try it. Ooh, 5 Fs. Uh-oh, 5 Fs. I'll go, yes, we did cover them. I'm just stopping on the 5 Fs. It was flight, fight, fold, fake it, and let me think, what's the 5th one? Freeze. Remember when I talked about freezing? Freeze in a meeting? Those were the 5 Fs. Fight, flight, fold, fake it, or freeze. Anyone have anything else? Remember, the primary saying and belief that I have is that if you don't ask, you don't get. And that applies in all negotiations. I have negotiated with Walmart. With every hotel that I stay in, I negotiate for the best view. At Walmart, I usually get discounts on plants, on things that have a bump or a scratch on them. That's the power of negotiations. I help others negotiate. I'll help you negotiate. I'd love to come to your chapter or to see you at the National Convention next year and show you a little bit more about how to negotiate so that when you do, you're heard. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mary. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.